History remembers Adolf Hitler as the dictator who led Germany into World War II and caused unimaginable destruction. But before the world knew his name, he was just a boy from a small Austrian town, unknown, uncertain, and directionless. His rise from an ordinary childhood to one of the most feared figures in history shows how personal failures, social unrest, and national crises can combine to create a storm. The story begins in Braunau am Inn, Austria, in 1889. Adolf Hitler was born into a modest family. His father was strict and demanding, his mother caring and protective. As a child, he loved art and imagined a future as a painter. But when he applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, his application was rejected, twice. His dream collapsed. With no stable income and no direction, he drifted through Vienna, often homeless, selling paintings to survive. In Vienna's dark streets, he discovered politics and ideology. The city was full of sharp contrasts and nationalist movements. Hitler absorbed ideas about nationalism, race, and power that would later shape his worldview. Then came World War I. Hitler joined the German army and finally found belonging. The war gave him purpose. But when Germany was defeated in 1918, that purpose collapsed. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated the nation. Hitler blamed politicians and minorities for Germany's loss. This anger became fuel for his future ambitions. After the war, Germany was in chaos. The economy was broken, politics unstable, people desperate for direction. Hitler joined a small political group, the German Workers' Party, and quickly rose through the ranks with words. His ability to speak passionately moved crowds. He turned frustration into energy, offering simple answers to complex problems. This is about how a struggling society can lift someone dangerous to power, how personal bitterness can turn eye. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, a small town in Austria near the German border. His father, Alois Hitler, worked as a customs officer, strict, demanding, believing in order above all else. His mother, Clara, was gentle and loving. Young Adolf was deeply attached to her. From outside, Hitler's childhood didn't look extraordinary. He attended school, played with friends, grew up in a modest home. But inside the house, life wasn't easy. His father ruled with a heavy hand, expecting obedience and excellence. Adolf clashed with him, especially about career choices. His father wanted him to become a civil servant. Adolf dreamed of being an artist. As a young boy, Adolf loved drawing and painting. He spent hours sketching buildings and landscapes. His teachers noticed his talent, but also saw a stubborn, emotional side. He didn't like taking orders and reacted strongly to criticism. His father dismissed his artistic dreams as foolish. When Adolf was a teenager, tragedy struck. His father died suddenly in 1903, and his beloved mother passed away a few years later. Her death crushed him. He was just 18, emotionally lost, and financially insecure. With both parents gone, he decided to follow his dream and moved to Vienna to study art. He applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, but was rejected, twice. His drawings were too weak. This rejection was more than a failed application. It was a deep, personal wound. For the first time, his dreams fell apart. He drifted through Vienna, living in cheap hostels, selling small paintings, spending long hours wandering the city's streets. Vienna was filled with political debates, social tensions, and nationalist movements. As Adolf listened and observed, these ideas slowly shaped his thoughts. He was just a young man, poor, frustrated, searching for purpose. No one had any idea this quiet boy would one day control one of the most powerful nations on earth. In 1907, young Adolf Hitler arrived in Vienna with dreams in his eyes. The city was grand, magnificent architecture, music, art, intellectual debates. He believed this was where his dream of becoming a famous artist would come true. But the Vienna Academy rejected him. The professors said his drawings lacked quality, especially in depicting the human form. The rejection broke him, but he didn't give up. In 1908, he applied again. But once more, he failed. This second failure was devastating. His dream collapsed completely. He had no backup plan, no direction. His mother was gone. The city had turned its back on him. Life in Vienna quickly became difficult. Without stable income, Hitler lived in cheap hostels and homeless shelters. He sold small paintings and postcards to survive. Some days he earned enough to eat, other days he didn't. He wore the same clothes for years, often sick and isolated. Vienna was full of political tension. Nationalism, anti-Semitism, and debates about the empire's future were everywhere. Hitler, lonely and bitter, began to absorb these ideas. He listened to street speakers, read political pamphlets, and developed strong opinions. He found groups that echoed his frustrations, blaming different communities for society's problems. His anger had many targets: the academy that rejected him, the society that didn't recognize his talent, the political system he felt was corrupt. Instead of accepting failure, he began to see himself as someone wronged by others. That mindset of blame, bitterness, and resentment would stay with him for life. By 1910, Hitler was no longer the hopeful young artist. He was a frustrated drifter, living in Vienna's margins, his heart full of disappointment. But these years were crucial. The seeds of something dark had been planted. Rejection had crushed his artistic dream and reshaped his entire identity. In 1914, Europe stood on the edge of World War I. For Adolf Hitler, sitting in Munich as a struggling, directionless man, it was exactly what he had been waiting for. When Germany declared war, Hitler rushed to volunteer for the German army. In the trenches of the Western Front, life was brutal. Hitler served as a dispatch runner, carrying messages across battlefields under fire. It required courage, and he was known as a disciplined and loyal soldier. Unlike many who grew tired of war, Hitler thrived in the military environment. The structure, uniforms, and national songs matched his sense of nationalism. He believed he was fighting for Germany's glory. He fought in major battles, including the Battle of the Somme, and received the Iron Cross for bravery. But the war didn't just give him medals, it gave him a new worldview. In the trenches, Hitler developed deep hatred for those he believed were weak or disloyal to Germany. He saw the war as a test of nations and blamed Germany's internal divisions for any weakness. In October 1918, Hitler was temporarily blinded by a gas attack. While recovering in hospital, he received devastating news. Germany had surrendered. The Kaiser had abdicated. For him, it was a shock that felt personal. Hitler refused to accept defeat. He believed Germany had been betrayed from within by politicians, revolutionaries, and Jews. This stab-in-the-back myth became central to his future propaganda. The war transformed him. He entered it as a lonely young man with no future. He left it as a passionate nationalist, furious about Germany's defeat and convinced he had a role to play in restoring its greatness. The trenches had given him identity. The surrender had given him anger. Both would fuel his political rise. After Germany's defeat, Hitler returned to a country that was unrecognizable. The empire was gone. The Weimar Republic had taken over. Streets were filled with protests and strikes. Soldiers returned to unemployment and chaos. Still serving in the army as a political observer, Hitler was sent to attend meetings of various political groups in Munich. In September 1919, he walked into a small gathering of the German Workers' Party. During the meeting, a speaker made a point Hitler disagreed with. He couldn't hold back. He stood up and launched into an emotional, fiery response. The room went silent. People listened. By the time he finished, everyone knew this was no ordinary soldier. The party's founder, Anton Drexler, immediately recognized something special. Hitler had a rare gift. He could move a crowd. Within days, Drexler invited him to join. Hitler accepted, and that decision marked the beginning of his political journey. Once inside, Hitler threw himself into party work with intense energy. He wrote propaganda, recruited members, and gave speeches. He spoke about national pride, betrayal, the humiliation of Versailles, and the need for strong leadership. His anger reflected the frustration many Germans were feeling. Crowds started to grow. First dozens, then hundreds, eventually thousands. People came not for the party, but for him. His voice, his gestures, His fiery eyes made listeners feel like he was speaking their deepest thoughts. Within the DAP, his rise was meteoric. His speeches weren't just talks. They were performances, filled with drama, emotion, and destiny. In 1920, the party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Hitler had discovered his most dangerous weapon, his voice, and with that voice, he was about to shake Germany's political foundations. By the early 1920s, Hitler had gathered a loyal following, but in his mind, words were no longer enough. It was time to seize power. The political climate gave him hope. The Weimar Republic was weak, the economy was collapsing under hyperinflation. Political violence was common. Inspired by Mussolini's March on Rome, Hitler believed he could do the same in Germany. On November 8, 1923, Hitler and armed Nazi stormtroopers burst into a large political meeting at a Munich beer hall. He fired a pistol into the ceiling and shouted, "The national revolution has begun." But the next morning, when Hitler and supporters marched through Munich, they were met by armed police. Gunfire erupted. 16 Nazis and 4 policemen were killed. The march collapsed into chaos. Hitler fled but was arrested within 2 days. This failed Beer Hall Putsch seemed like the end of his political career. He faced treason charges, but Hitler turned his trial into a stage, delivering passionate speeches attacking the Weimar government. The trial became national news. Instead of execution, Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison but served less than 1. Inside Landsberg prison, he had time to reflect and rethink strategy. He realized the path to power would not be through quick coups, but through politics, propaganda, and patience. During these months, Hitler began writing Mein Kampf, My Struggle, with Rudolf Hess's help. In the book, he laid out his core beliefs: hatred toward Jews, racial hierarchy, rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, and the need for a single strong leader. Prison taught Hitler the value of patience. He studied how political parties operated, how propaganda worked, and how mass psychology could be manipulated. He understood that to control Germany, he needed to win the people and use the system to his advantage. When he was released in December 1924, Hitler was no longer just a failed revolutionary. He was a self-proclaimed future leader with a written manifesto and a revised plan. He stopped thinking like a street fighter and started acting like a politician with a long game. When Hitler left prison, his Nazi party was weak and barely relevant. For the next few years, he worked quietly to rebuild his movement. Then came 1929, the year that changed everything. The Great Depression hit Germany with brutal force. Within months, businesses collapsed, banks failed, and millions lost jobs. Families stood in endless lines for bread. Savings disappeared overnight. This wasn't just economic crisis, it was a crisis of faith in the Weimar Republic. For Hitler, this was the moment he had been waiting for. His speeches became sharper and more persuasive. He didn't talk about complicated economics. He talked about blame, national pride, and a simple promise: Germany will rise again. While others argued over policies, Hitler offered identity and direction. He told suffering Germans their pain had a cause, and that he was the man to remove it. The Nazi Party, once small, suddenly became a national force. Hitler and Joseph Goebbels built a sophisticated propaganda machine using rallies, posters, slogans, newspapers, and radio broadcasts. Unemployed workers, struggling farmers, angry veterans, fearful middle-class citizens, they all began turning toward the Nazi movement. In their despair, Hitler's message of strength, order, and revenge sounded powerful. In the 1930 elections, the Nazi Party shocked the country, going from 12 seats to 107 in the Reichstag, becoming the second-largest party. Hitler had transformed from political outsider into serious contender for leadership. The Great Depression had broken the spirit of the German people, but opened the door for him, and he walked through that door with a calculated smile. On January 30, 1933, Adolf Hitler was named Chancellor of Germany. Conservative leaders thought they could control him. They were wrong. The first crucial move came soon after. On February 27, 1933, the Reichstag building burned. The Nazis blamed communists. Hitler used it to issue the Reichstag fire decree, suspending civil liberties. Thousands of political opponents were arrested. On March 23, 1933, the Reichstag passed the Enabling Act, giving Hitler power to make laws without parliament's consent. It was a legal mask for dictatorship. The Nazi regime moved fast. In May 1933, independent trade unions were smashed. Political parties were banned. The Nazi Party became the only legal party. Local governments were dismantled in Gleichschaltung, coordination. Germany's checks and balances were hollowed out. In June 1934, during the Night of the Long Knives, Hitler ordered a purge of SA leaders and political enemies. This bloody action sent a clear message: Hitler would not tolerate rivals. When President Hindenburg died in August 1934, Hitler merged the offices of President and Chancellor, calling himself Führer. The military swore personal loyalty to him. With that oath, Hitler gained control of the armed forces. But control was more than laws and guns. The Ministry of Propaganda controlled radio, newspapers, film, art, and education. Books were burned, schools were rewritten. The Gestapo silenced dissent through fear and arrests. Hitler also offered immediate benefits. Public works projects reduced unemployment. A sense of order returned. For citizens tired of chaos, these changes felt like relief. Every step Hitler took was carefully framed as legal, necessary, or patriotic. The Nazis used courts, constitution, and emergency powers to give their actions legitimacy. By 1934 to 1935, Germany had transformed from a democratic republic into a one-party state under one man. Opposition was arrested, exiled, or murdered. The machinery of the state served a single goal: the power and vision of Adolf Hitler. He had not seized power with a single dramatic coup. He legalized his way to absolute power, mixed legality with violence, and silenced the nation slowly enough that many accepted it. Adolf Hitler's rise to power didn't happen overnight. It was a mix of personal ambition, public anger, political weakness, and economic crisis. He didn't seize power with a single violent act. He climbed his way up, using emotions, speeches, and opportunities. His story is a warning from history. It shows how a society facing crisis can turn to extreme voices, how broken dreams can twist into dangerous ideologies, and how silence and underestimation can open doors that should have stayed closed. From his birth in a small town to his control of an entire nation, this was the making of a dictator, a journey that changed the world forever.